Check, it says check that your stream. Oh, so I'll see this. Hi, are we live?
It looks like we're live.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Here we are. We're live. We're going to wait a few minutes to start this sisterhood in the group. Hi, Nirmala.
Hey, Kelly.
How are you?
I'm well.
Good.
Excited to talk about sisterhood again.
Yeah, sounds like you had a great time last week.
It was fun. I mean, I definitely missed you, and I'm sure other people did too. But here we are together now.
Here we are. And I hope, let's see, there's some other people joining us today. We did get some feedback from people that joined after, so it'd be nice to get some people live, wouldn't it, Nir?
I think it would, because that's kind of what makes these calls vibrant and interesting. It's getting feedback and live comments from people. And we're kind of in the process of collecting a lot of stories from people, because I think we might have mentioned this before, or actually, I don't know if we have quite announced it yet. But Kelly's in the process of working on her second book, and it's all about sisterhood. So we thought it would be really fun to just collect stories about people's experiences with sisterhood, whether they're positive or whether they have to do with challenges around sisterhood, because we're starting to get into these like larger creative conversations about the power of sisterhood and the things that kind of keep us from having the sisterhood we want, as well as all of the things that make sisterhood so magical and inspiring and unique in our lives. So that's one of the main drives behind doing these calls. It's to actually share in a larger sisterhood and have these transparent discussions about things that we've experienced, which is what we will be doing today.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, just to kind of recap, I'll have you talk about just basically just the ideas you talked about last week, Nir. But for me, I mean, I grew up as an only child, so I really defined myself and created my family through my friends. And when I was younger, because I'm 51, the friendships now are very, I think, more open to crossing genders a lot more. At that age, it was like boys and girls. It was very separate. And my girls were my sisters. They were my friends. They were my protectors. And I was the same. And I learned a lot of values because I moved so much in my life through the women and the girls that I connected with then. And I think it's really important, like, to have that foundational piece. And with that said, I think like my daughter, who's almost going to be 20 this year, my stepdaughter is 26, they're the same way. I mean, their friends are their lifelines. And I think, most women, a lot of women would say the same thing. Would you?
I think so. And, it's funny when I think back on my own life, like I just remember being in elementary school, being in middle school, being in high school, where everybody, all the girls that I knew wanted to have a boyfriend. And for me, it's like my ultimate dream, my ultimate fantasy was having the best friend that I could like pour my heart into. We could share one another's secrets. We could commiserate and basically grow together. And that was always like kind of my most fundamental longing since I was a kid, basically. And it's also interesting because I look back on that and I think that is the area where I experienced both like, that sense of like the passionate connection, but also the most disappointments. And I think that there's a lot of women who can probably relate to that sense of knowing like, yes, sisterhood is important. And this kind of connection that we have with other women, since we're little girls, it's extremely unique and special. There are books that people write about it. I think about the movie Little Women that I went to go see with one of my best girlfriends when I was in San Francisco. And I remember loving that book when I was little because it was all about like the power of sisterhood and the power of relationships between girls and women. But I think that so many of us are also dealing with the disappointments and the hurt and the betrayal that can also arise from that kind of relationship that is so special. It is so close. It is so intimate. And yet there's also room for all these other things, wounds that come up, and and the grudges that we hold. And so it's a really complex
I really
dynamic.
Yeah, the disappointment piece is big for me because I think there's a lot of people out there that have these idealized images, kind of like you talked about when you said that about when you were little and that was your vision. And, I had that vision and
Mhm.
I manifested that. It took a long time. I would hop from school to school and I'd be like,
Yeah,
right, who's going to be my best friend? That's what I used to do. Like, I remember as
totally.
a little kid, like, who's going to be the girl that I want to hang out with the most, that really,
Mhm.
that I love. And that saved me in a way. Like that was one of my pieces that my survival skills in a way. But I think about it now and I think, I met my closest friend and I still call her my best friend. We're like little children. um, when I met her in college, but we became best friends right after college. And now 30 years later, our bond is stronger than ever. And we've been through the ups and downs for each
Right.
other. We've been through fights. We live across the country from each other. We've been through, death and heartache and illness and childbearing and all the raising the children. And honestly, like it makes me tear up. There's nothing more powerful to me than that relationship. I
Yeah.
love my husband. I adore my partner, but I mean, I would call, my best friend Michelle like a soulmate to me as much as
Hmm.
my husband or even more because she is the family I have chosen and her
Right.
is the family I've chosen. And I think I feel grateful that I just have that one friendship because sometimes you don't even get that. But
Yeah,
I do
exactly.
believe that we put in what we put in, we get out.
Exactly. And when you talk about your friendship with Michelle, to me, it's just as like there's just as much like power and commitment as a marriage.
Yes.
When you talk about it, it's like you've been through the ups and downs. You've kind of like, you have to move through sort of the romance and the idealized image stage and get to that place where you're like, okay, here's another human being. They have their shit, they have the things that they're going through. And am I in it for the long haul? And I
Mhm.
think that's also something that is really important when it comes to sisterhood. It's like, are we going to be in it for the long haul, or are we going to walk away at the first sign of conflict? And that's also something that I think is really important to look at. Like, how committed are we in
Well,
our sisterhood?
I had a dear friend do that. And I want to give this example because I think it's important for people to understand that, like, we all have those people that choose to walk away from us. And,
Mm-hmm.
I had my two closest friends, they didn't know each other for the last 30 years. And my friend that made a choice this year to walk away, it hurt me, but I realized the reason it hurt me was because of my idealized image of our friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Right.
because, and when I say idealized image, let's explain that. It's like these, the fantasies, the fairy tale about like this woman, because I'm fiercely loyal. And when I decide that a friend goes into my heart, they're there forever and through the ups and downs and everything, unless there's a complete abandonment or betrayal. I'm there. And so I think about this woman, and she was so in my life. We were each other's godparents to our children. We were in each other's lives daily. And then we kind of moved into a different phase, and we just weren't aligned anymore. And you know how that, what is that phrase? Like people come into your life for a short amount of time, that corny phrase. You know what I mean? I'm not into that, but it actually kind of makes sense. It's like, I was really shocked. I thought we would be friends forever. And
Mm-hmm.
when I got this text from her basically saying, I think we can just let each other go. I'm not into you anymore. Like basically like you're not that into you anymore, like the movie.
The breakup. Yeah.
I was just so like, I was shocked because I had put her in a space of like, even though we're not connected now, we will always like have something.
Sure.
But her choice was, I don't want to be connected to you anymore.
Yeah.
What do you do then?
I
No?
mean, I think that fundamentally, like even if that's hurtful, it's something that you have to like be able to live with and respect, because I mean that is her choice. That's the choice she made. I
Right.
think for me personally, like I only want people in my life who wholeheartedly want to be there. And
Yes.
it's like you can feel it when they're not. You can feel it when someone isn't totally committed and when it's just half-hearted. And so for me, that tells me everything that I need to know. And I've gotten better over the years at letting that go. And I also have to be honest with myself when I'm feeling that way about other people. And, one of the things that the whole topic today is considering like who's in your life and defining the sisterhood that you want. And one of the things that Kelly and I have been talking about is just this idea of relationships that you have by default.
Yeah.
And those can look a number of different ways. For me, it's almost like the default relationships have been around for a long time. And at a certain point, you just didn't bother to look at the contract that you had with the other person, renegotiate the terms, figure out if they still work for you or not. And so I think it's really important for us, even just individually, like, yes, I do believe that those kinds of friendships where you're in it for the long haul, you're able to work through conflict are extremely powerful. And realistically, that's not going to be every single
Mm-mm.
friendship that we have with every single person. And the ones where that it does work out that way, they might surprise us. And the ones that fall by the wayside, those might surprise us too. But I think we also have to get really honest with ourselves and ask ourselves the question of who's in my life by default. Is this person my friend because I feel a sense of loyalty towards them,
Or
because they've been
responsibility.
my friend for
Or
20 years? Or responsibility, that's a really big one. Or I just don't want to upset anyone, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And I think that getting some clarity on, and I'm not saying not all default relationships are like bad. It doesn't mean that you don't need to have this person in your life for whatever reason, but just getting clear on, okay, like what is the role that this person has in my life? Am I friends with them because our kids are in the same class
right.
and we see each other all the time and it's a
Or I
matter of
work out with them.
convenience?
Or I work out.
Yeah, or I'm working out with them. There's nothing wrong with those kinds of relationships, but I think we have to be really clear on, like, well, who is that person in my life? And is that something that is serving me? And if you ever get to a place where you're like, all right, it's not serving me, are you willing to actually look at that? Because I think that tends to be harder for a lot of people, being the person to walk away as
It's
opposed
so hard
to
for me.
being the person who's walked away from.
Right. And I'm fiercely loyal, but I also hang on too long sometimes. And,
Yeah,
I think about that too. And I think the longer we hang on to things that are, and, I'm looking at it now, it's like, it's not about that it's bad or they're bad. You don't have to make them bad to walk away, to make a different choice.
yeah,
But you can look at it as you're freeing up your time. You're making a choice that, you free up your space so that you can bring more energy into your life. You can bring,
exactly.
a different new kind of energy into the space with a friendship, because people can, like you said, people can feel it, right? You feel it when someone's not that into you or feeling obligated to do things. And I think I just think it's a really important thing to look at and to really get clarity around when people, I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. Sorry, I get distracted really. It's like 7 ADD. I'm just owning it. To really have clarity around when people aren't right for you, and
Yes.
when you've moved forward, and it's okay.
Mhm.
It's really okay. But on the same level, also deciding, like for example, if you're drawn to somebody and then they trigger you, and I want to talk about those trigger points a little. When you're triggered by someone, getting curious and asking yourself the question around being triggered, because I think there's
Mhm.
a lot of times I've been triggered by people, women that I've met. I was intrigued by them, and then I was triggered, and then they
Yeah.
ended up being very dear friends. So not always just throwing someone out because you're triggered by them or they lit something up in you that made you feel uncomfortable, because then you got to
Mhm.
question, like, what is that uncomfortability, what is that mirroring to me? Because that is just a reflection of your own reaction, right? I wanted to
Yeah.
talk to you about that. What are your thoughts on
I
that?
think, yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think sometimes those triggers are, when we sort of look deeper into them, they're not always what we're not always triggered for the reasons that we think we're triggered. If we get even like, so a lot of times we get triggered by people because we're like, oh, well, I just don't like the way that she talks, or she's rude, or, she's dismissive, or she's narcissistic. And then if we dig a little bit deeper, it's usually because that person reminds us of someone in our lives, someone that we know, someone we might have actually been very close to. So I think, Kelly, you talk about this a lot in terms of the transference that we have
Yes.
on people. So we always have these filters through which we're looking at other people. And it's tricky because, we might be observing something in the person that, yeah, is legitimately annoying, at least to us. But I think we also have to look deeper, especially when we get super triggered. And this is actually really funny. I used to always tell myself when I got triggered by someone, like, oh, this is really good information. This person could end up being a really good friend of mine. Because I went through a period of time where everybody who really triggered me, I got to know them a little bit more. And I realized, like, oh, I really, really like them. But it was almost like there was something that I was noticing in them. And this was a specific period in my life when I think I was a little bit more insecure. There was something that I was noticing in them that felt like it was a lack in myself. So if I would meet people and I'd be like, oh, that person is like really smart, or they're arrogant, they're conceited, whatever the case might be, I realized, like, oh, that's me
It's the
projecting my
personal
shit
transfer.
onto them,
It's
you know?
a personal transference, because I mean, you could do situational transfers, historical transference, or personal, right? Where,
Mhm.
and when I say transference, what I'm talking about is like they just remind you of a situation. I mean,
Yeah.
or they may look like someone and you can't place it, but you just don't like that person. That
Yes.
happens all the time.
All the
You know,
time. Yeah.
I mean, it happens all the time where I'm like, yeah, I don't vibe with her. And then I question it now. Before I would go, oh, yeah, that's my intuition. I need to follow that. And, intuition is powerful and it's wonderful, but we need to have wisdom behind that intuition. And we have to
Exactly.
understand that the intuition, we really need to question it and get clarity, as we talk about all the
We
time,
do.
around that gut hit and go, wait a minute, let's call ourselves and our own personality on this, because is this person reminding me of a situation, reminding me of myself, something I don't like in myself or someone else? Or do they just look like somebody? Or they, and also
Exactly.
the story we tell ourselves when we interact with someone, and that's why I want to go into this next piece, but is so important. If we can have consciousness of the story, like when you meet someone and they meet you, there's this 5 finger rule I want to talk about. Okay. And this is why when I love Don Miguel Ruiz and his 4 agreements, because he talks about, one of the agreements is never take anything personally. And it's such a huge piece for me. And I really got it when my teacher Alima talked about it, because she basically said one day, you guys, here's the deal. You need to give up getting anyone to like you ever again. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm a people pleaser. I want everybody to like me, right? This was 15 years ago, which, I still have that in me. I want to be cared for and liked and appreciated.
Hmm.
But, and she said, basically, you got a 20% chance of connecting with people, because you're going to meet people and you're going to like them and they're not going to like you, because they're going to have negative transference on you. You're going to have positive, or you're both going to just be like not into each other, right? Or, you know what I mean? So, and then the only match is that 20%, which is you like them, they like you, and it's all about transference. But until you can get through all of that bullshit, right?
Hmm.
All the stuff at the top where you're like, oh, she's cute. She likes to run. I like to
Yeah.
run.
Yeah.
We have kids the same age. Oh, she dresses cute. Or, I mean, really, if you get past all that, or she's spiritual. I like her,
Hmm.
get past all that shit and have a really deep connection, go through a couple of issues and challenges where you actually are transparent and connecting,
Definitely. Yeah.
go, oh, okay, I really did like you.
Right.
So my whole point is, give it up getting people to try to like you, because you have no control over if somebody doesn't like you or not with transference, ever.
Hmm.
because they're going to have situational transference. They might look at your face and you might remind them of your mother, of their mother that was terrible to them. I mean, who knows? So you have to just be yourself. It helped me to go, I'm going to give it up and be as much as myself as I can.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about that before, but it's
Yeah, definitely.
a powerful thing.
It's really powerful. I mean, I think that it is interesting because it makes me think also about just how so often in our lives when we're interacting with people, it's not like a person interacting with another person. It's a mask interacting with another mask. And it's like we're all wearing these masks about that kind of portray us as being people that maybe we aren't. And those are the things that we're judging when we're deciding on the sisters that we want in our lives. So in
Yeah.
some ways, in a weird way, it's almost easy. Sometimes it can be easier to connect with someone you're totally neutral about because there's no need to like even put on that mask. So sometimes you can find yourself having an unexpectedly transparent conversation with someone that you don't have super strong feelings about. And you're like, oh, wow, there's connection here. Who would have thought? So yeah, I think it's good to
sorry to
remain
be
open.
so shallow, but I just saw that series called Love is Blind on Netflix.
Oh, I did too. Oh my God, it's addictive.
And it's just the cheesiest show. And at the same time, I watched the whole thing, so I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but
yeah, I did too.
it's really fascinating. You know, these people, the whole premise is you don't get to see these people and you sit in these pods and have these deep conversations, and then you pick someone, and then they have the visual and they have chemistry and the physicality, and it's like, and they're actually moving through the world in the real world instead of just deeply connecting in that mental and emotional energetic way, and and things go wrong. And I think
Yep.
that's transference too. I think they have transference on what they look like, their idealized images of what they are supposed to be with, right? Who they're supposed to be with, like if they have money, if they don't, if they're
right.
good, you know. And it's pretty fascinating to watch that, and it's a real example of what we're talking about.
I think it is. Yeah. Yeah. So we have that in our intimate relationships, and we have that in our relationships with the people who are our friends and our sisters. And I think it's really important to look at that, to look at like, well, what are some of our default patterns that we fall into that attract us to certain people in our lives?
Yeah. What are our patterns? Like what's a pattern of yours, Nam? Because I know
in terms of the people that I'm drawn to and who's in my life. I'm not exactly sure what I mean, and I feel like I have a lot of positive default patterns at this point that I've had to learn over the years. I think that a default pattern that I probably used to have was I would project all of my positive qualities onto other people. And I think I had an issue with like romanticizing a lot of the people who were in my life and feeling somehow like they were better than me. I think I had this issue with comparison around women in my life and feeling like, oh, well, she's so much prettier, she's so much smarter, she's so much more accomplished, and having kind of constantly feeling like I was kind of walking in their shadow. And I realized that that was much more so about me than it was them, because they had their issues as well that I didn't really know about. So that was a default pattern for me, I think, like feeling like I was overshadowed in some way, feeling like I couldn't fully be myself because that person wasn't going to like live up to the standards that I felt my other friends had. So it's funny. I mean, I think I walked around for a really long time feeling like I had this inferiority complex in all of my friendships.
I would have never known that, and that's the thing. Like you project powerful confidence, right? But you have that.
Well, it took me a long time to actually like build that and establish that, because what I also realized is like kind of speaking to your point earlier, the relationships that I had with these women who were in my life were just not very authentic. They were surface level. They were based on doing and saying the right thing, like, projecting an image of someone that I wasn't, and I could never truly be vulnerable. So I think at a certain point in my life, I became much more comfortable with falling apart, with saying the wrong or inappropriate thing, And it was very telling in terms of who reacted well to that and who didn't. And I think that that really just turned a lot of my perceptions upside down around
I love
friendship.
that. And I love the vulnerability is so key, and really understanding what your own vulnerability is with other people and with
Yeah.
women in your life. Mine, my pattern. I mean, I've had a couple patterns. I've had a lot of challenges with my mother, and I think I had a lot of unconscious belief systems I created about women from my mother. And so when I
Hmm.
really addressed those and dove into those more and more, I realized it was almost like a non-thinking thing. It shifted out of me. It's a hard one to kind of put into words, but it just felt like this weight was just taken off me, that I could state my own needs, that I didn't have to just sit there and take it and be loyal as a friend or as a daughter, right? To
Hmm.
really own my own feelings and be real with my mom and be real with the people in my life that I felt like had done me wrong, I think is a really important piece that a lot of women skip over because they think,
Yeah.
well, I'll just deal with it on my own and I'll skip over that and just make it okay. And it's
Hmm.
not okay to do that, because we always remanifest it. I remanifested it in my first marriage. I married my mother.
Definitely.
And I think we all do that. But I think one of my big patterns is expecting my friends to have the same values around friendship that I do.
Right.
It's a big one for me. Whether in the values for me are like loyalty, showing up for each other. And I would say, most of my friends do that. And I've had a
Hmm.
few that I've been very, very deeply close with and opened my heart to, that I've been let down by. And I watch the anger that comes up, and it really isn't about them. It's about my image of what I think they should do for me.
Right.
And I just really want to talk about getting away from blame there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
We blame our sisters instead of going, wait, let's own this. What is my
exactly.
belief system around what I want this friend to be for me? Because maybe that friend was like that for me before and it's not there anymore. Why do I have expectations? Because I'd show up for them. I just need to be me and show up the way I would show up for a friend, and
Yeah.
allow them to be who they are. Does that make sense?
I think it does. And I think it's also just really important to be able to feel like you can be transparent with someone else about what your expectations might be. I mean, I think there's a lot of value. And that was the first call in the series that was last week was all about the power of showing up for yourself, and how when you learn to show up for yourself as your own best sister, you learn to show up for other women in a similar way. So I think it's really important to be able to show up for ourselves. And I also think it's important to be able to open dialogue with with our friends, with our sisters about the expectations that we might have, and to be really transparent. And again, like not in a way that's blaming, but in a way that is actually clarifying, where you can both clarify what
I
it is
love
you want,
that.
what it
Yeah,
is you need,
it is important to clarify, right? But to take that self responsibility, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
But I do want to go back to the patterns that keep us stuck in these default relationships. Like that would keep me stuck. And I'd sit there and I just, I mean, you know me, and you would give me that feedback. You're like, you are loyal to a default. You're loyal
Yes.
to a place where it hurts you. And so
Mhm.
I'm learning how to not do that. But it's
Yeah,
hard for me because my image in my head is, if I'm not loyal, I'm not a good friend, you know?
sure.
And so I love that we're different. We challenge each other.
Mhm.
We have a soul sister connection, but we've been given that feedback when we do retreats and when we're with our team. We're very different, but we complement.
Yeah. And it's funny because like our relationship is not a default relationship. It isn't for me. It's very unique in my life because obviously, we have a working relationship. Like from the very get-go, this was a creative partnership. And that's something that has just continued to grow over the years. And I mean, it's taken me out of my comfort zone. Like my comfort zone has always been sort of like behind a computer screen writing. And then at a certain point, Kelly was like, hey, you're gonna like come out and do these retreats with me and like teach workshops with me. And I was kind of like, okay, I guess so. But again, for me, like this is a relationship that's really challenged me to kind of like grow outside of my own comfort zone and to sort of push my limits. And that's something that I think I've really personally appreciated, because it's taken me out of the default. It's taken me out of the default of just like the relationships that are about hanging out and commiserating. I mean, we definitely do our hanging out and commiserating. But I think that this is a friendship in which I believe we get to both be our best selves and show up as our authentic selves. And that's something that I think is really important to strive towards, you know, in all situations, those kinds of relationships where we can really fully show up. And sometimes that showing up can be really challenging, you
Right.
know?
But I think that safety is really key. I mean, because for me, I feel very safe with you. And
Mm-hmm.
even last
Yeah.
week, you were irritated and you said, I'm irritated.
Uh-oh, Kelly, I'm not sure if you're frozen or if that's me. Okay, it looks like Kelly might be frozen, but I think that, okay, got it. Kelly's connection died for a second. So I think and I'm sure that she'll be back soon. But speaking to what Kelly was just saying, about the importance of safety in relationships, I think that there's something about being able to speak to what is true in the moment that creates a sense of safety. So typically, I think that so many women are just trained to kind of move away from the difficult conversations or the difficult emotions. And that might be anger or irritation or anything that's really intense that might be coming up that can be hard to admit to. And a lot of times we're taught that that is what keeps us safe. It's like, oh no, don't be angry, because if you get angry, that's going to be unsafe. But I actually think that there's something that is incredibly reassuring about being around sisters who are able to fully own their emotions. And I've personally found that that's something that I have really nurtured for myself, like that this ability to say, okay, I'm feeling upset now, I'm feeling irritated, because it's just, I think to me it creates a greater sense of trust when you're able to actually fully own whatever it is you're feeling, when you're around other people who are able to fully own what it is that they're feeling. And it's almost like it gets you to a place of clarity together, because it's like, okay, hey, I'm angry right now. You know, the other person can be like, all right, I'm listening. What is going on? And where can we take this? Whereas if you're accustomed to just repressing your emotions and saying, no, it's okay, it's fine, I think that actually creates a greater sense of a lack of safety, because as women, we are intuitive beings. Like we can tell that there's something wrong, even if the other person isn't saying it. So I think that the piece around safety, having safety in our sisterhood relationships, an important part of that is owning your feelings, owning whatever it is you're experiencing, and being willing to speak to that. And again, speaking about that, not from a place of blame, but from a place of, this is what's happening for me right now. So that's something that I think is really important. So, okay, Kelly is not quite back. I think she's having some issues with her internet connection, which I completely understand because that happens to me all the time. So I'm just going to continue to talk until she gets back, hopefully. So, patterns that keep us stuck in default relationships. We talked a little bit about this, and Kelly and I spoke to some of the patterns that we've had in the past. There's a lot of them, and I'm sure that if you're listening to this, you can probably name some of those patterns in your life, but it's a good thing to consider the patterns that keep you in friendships where maybe you don't feel like you're fully authentic, where you don't feel like you can fully be yourself. And that could include people pleasing. That's a really, really big one. Not wanting to hurt anybody's feelings. I think in my case, just, when I was younger, having sort of a shaky self-esteem and almost feeling like, wow, I'm really lucky that this beautiful, accomplished, intelligent person wants to be my friend. Even if those friendships were not necessarily healthy or authentic or transparent. There's the whole piece about the misplaced loyalty, which Kelly spoke to.
Self-esteem and almost feeling like, wow, I'm really lucky that this.
There's the need to belong, and then there's a lot of different patterns that I think we have. And it looks like Kelly's back.
Am I on?
Yes, you're here.
Hear anything.
You can. I can hear you.
Oh, good. There I am. I'm on a different computer. Hello. Hi, Eileen. I saw some Facebook posts here. This is kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Peg even wrote to us too. Peg Rodriguez.
She did?
Many things. Thanks, Peg. We love you.
That's sweet.
I get it on my phone here.
That's cool. Yeah. So when you were gone, I was just talking about patterns, the patterns that we might have that keep us from the sisterhood that we want. And I was kind of, you were starting to talk about safety. And that was, I think, when you got cut off. You were talking about safety in relationships.
I feel very safe with you, and I feel safe with several friends. But when you don't feel safe, I've been ghosted by friends, and we talked about that in the group where like people just go, I'm out, and they can't deal.
They can't deal. Yeah.
That's a non-starter for me in a friendship anymore. That's just a non-starter, because in any relationship, you have to be able to communicate, even if you make the choice together that this isn't going to work. At least you can communicate about it, right? So,
I completely agree. Yeah.
I think it's important to, literally look at it like a marriage, like marriage counseling. If you dive into a deep friendship, I love when you talked about renegotiating those places in your relationship where it's not working, like having those hard conversations, which we're going to talk about on our next call as well, and some tips and tricks on how to do that. But Eileen said, if one has developed a pattern of hiding because they feel unsafe, that itself fosters a fear of intimacy and vulnerability. Isn't that true?
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary. It's scary to get vulnerable. It's scary to get intimate. And I know how that feels to get called out on our shit, because we all have it. But once we accept the fact that we all have it, we can own it and be like, yeah, I screwed up, and not go into such shame and hiding.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's something, and I think a lot of people have wounds around like, oh, if I make a mistake, then that's, it's the end of the world. And this person is going to be angry at me forever. And I think it's really important for us to offer one another solidarity when we move through, when we're in those places of conflict, when we have disagreements, when maybe we screw up, we make mistakes, that kind of thing. And I think that so often people are really afraid of going into that territory because it brings up so much shame. So, there's ways in which our sisterhoods really reflect on kind of like these early lessons in our lives where we might have felt shame, or we might have felt a fear of abandonment, or whatever the case might be. So I think that we have to be really mindful of when, like, oh, this is like little 5-year-old me that's coming up in this relationship.
And what about the women that feel like they're not a girl's girl, right? They're not, they get along with men better. They're very literal. They just don't understand the irrationality of women, I'm not one of those, but
I'm not either.
Well,
I have friends who are, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stay here. So you can just turn that off. So what about those though? I just think that's got to be really challenging for those women, because they don't feel safe with other women, and I think I would encourage those women to look at the patterns that have happened in their lives that have created that belief system for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important.
So where are we next? Where do we want to go next, Near?
I think that there's these questions that we came up with that's based, like, so if we're thinking about how we want to define what we want and need in our sisterhood in a new way. So let's just say that you're at a crossroads in your life. You're looking at your patterns, you're looking at your default relationships, and maybe you're not happy with them. I think it's really important to get clear on what it is you need. And a lot of times we don't necessarily know what we need. So we can ask ourselves a few questions about the people who are in our lives. And actually, before we get to that, I know that Kelly, you've talked about this a lot, that whole idea that we are the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with, right? So that's something that I think is really important to remember, because there are consequences to who's in your life, you know?
I've got some toxic people from my past that come back in sometimes, and I'm like, whoa, I love you, and that you don't have to make them bad, but you can send them off with a boundary and love.
Exactly.
When you have those toxic people that come back in, because we really need to get clarity around who we want in our lives, because
exactly.
Those people that we spend the most time with represent who we are, right? We're all made up of energy.
They do. Yeah. And I think that it's really easy to see yourself like picking up on like I know, for example, if I'm around friends who might, just be generally more negative or cynical, I have to catch myself like, making really mean comments. And I'm like, where did that come from? Oh yeah, it's because I've been spending time with so-and-so. And it's like, you pick up the medicine and the poison of the people that you spend time with.
Both, right?
Yeah, you really do. And again, it's not a bad thing. You just have to be real. You have to look at that. And sometimes it's nice to think about like, well, what is the balance that you want to strike in your life? But keeping that 5 people, rule in your life, I think is really important, because I mean, who are the 5 sisters that you spend the most time with? Like, what do they represent?
I've been making a point, finally just learned this at 51. When I walk away from an interaction with someone, I go, how do I feel right now? Really checking in and getting that consciousness around how do I feel after that connection? Because just because someone is in your life, you don't have to go on autopilot and be like, oh yeah, I got to connect with them because I haven't seen them and I have to check it off like, women do. They check off their box. I think it's really important to go, how do I feel? Like, my Anthony talks about.
Yeah.
It's about what someone makes you feel.
That's such an important one, because I mean, I had that actually recently with somebody who was a friend of mine for a long time. At a certain point, I just noticed that I felt extremely depleted every time I talked to her. And that made me feel so bad, because I was like, this is somebody that I really care about. And yet this has been happening consistently. This has been like the pattern for 2 years. And I doubted that for a long time. It's like, oh, well, this is just me, because I didn't have a reason for it. There wasn't like a tangible thing. It was more of an energetic thing. And I think that so often we pick up on the things that are not obvious, the things that remain unsaid. So I think it's really important to also trust that, to know that however you feel might not necessarily come from something that the person said or did. It could just be, I mean, this might sound really woo-woo, but sometimes energetically, it's just not the right fit or the right time or whatever the case might be,
right? And I noticed, Darcy, you put in, what need does this person mean in my life? Is that what need does it fill in my life? I'm just curious about what that means.
I think just looking at, this was I think one of our questions, like if we're looking at the people who are in our life, just especially our default relationships, looking at the need.
What person meet in my life? That's right. You can edit that. Yeah. It's okay. I just was confused by that comment we put on Facebook. Megan, if you're there, hi Megan. Megan's there watching us.
Oh, hey Megan.
Yeah. And do I feel like I can fully be myself and appreciate it? I think it's really important to have women that celebrate us, sisters that show us our best selves when we're down and we're not seeing ourselves, right? I think that's really important. And also the values. That's a big one. Do we share similar values? Sometimes, Nirmal and I, we're in very different places in our lives. I mean, not even that, like, you're never going to be in my place. I have 6 kids, you have no kids. And
right.
But
there are just things that I cannot understand about you, Kelly.
We have similar values in a lot of ways about how we show up for each other, how we show up for our friends and ourselves. So it doesn't have to, I like having a variety of friends that are not in the same space as me. It teaches me, it pushes me to grow a lot as well.
I agree. Yeah.
But I think the more we get confident and the more we get consciousness around what it is we want, and we understand what we're triggered by, what the stories we tell ourselves are, the better and the deeper and more intimate the friendships and sisterhood can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So I'm just looking to see if there's does anybody have any questions? I know Eileen put a few things. Eileen said, yes, and allowing your friends to be who they are will free up a lot of energy. Isn't it the truth? Just let them be who they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
He is a cooperative foundation. Hurts and betrayals can be worked through if both people are working together. If it's a competitive foundation, there's a winner and a loser. And I don't want that for myself or my loved ones. It's so true. I don't really have a lot of competitiveness, but I think that does happen with women a lot, doesn't it?
I think it does happen. I know a lot of women whose relationships have been damaged by competition or perceived competition. Because sometimes it's because I remember having a friend who just believed that everybody, all of her women friends were out to get her, out to steal her ideas. And this person is not in my life anymore. But I was like, oh, wow, this is a perception that she has based on a wound that she's been carrying with her for a really long time. So the competition piece, yeah.
I mean, we have that shared belief system. And I think it's really freeing and empowering to have that belief system, because then you're not sitting around feeling like life's happening to you. It feels like you can make powerful choices and conscious choices in your life. I mean, because for me, when I decide to end a friendship, which doesn't happen very often at all, it's only happened a couple times in my life. It's a big deal when I take someone in my heart and I decide to let it go. Because I have a belief system that friendships morph and shift like we do, right? So that doesn't mean the friend I had, the friendship I have with this woman today is different than, is the same in a week, in months, in a year. And I think that's really important to look at it as that feminine aspect of all of us. And I don't want to get all ethereal here, but it's true. The feminine is all about that bamboo, that flexibility, that container. It's not defined like rigidly like masculine.
It's not rigid. Yeah. I think there's a lot of, for me, the best kinds of friendships are the ones where there's a lot of spaciousness and where there's a lot of room for, okay, we might not be in touch for months, but we're still in each other's hearts and we can feel that. And, circumstances change in people's lives. And I also think, it is a dramatic decision to end a friendship. Sometimes it's necessary. But, you can have relationships that go into different phases in your life. You can have someone who, is there 24/7 in one phase of your life, and maybe they're not as present in the next. And it doesn't mean that they're any less important. I think it just means that as we shift in our priorities and our focus, sometimes the people who are most prominent in our life will also shift. And I think that having the kind of spaciousness that allows for that is something that's really important. And for me, it's an important part of sustainable friendships because of the fact that I am, I am such a solitary person and I am such an independent person. So I kind of feel like I need like a huge container for a friendship. And I also feel like I'm pretty good at giving that, offering that to other people and having intimacy, but also noting that it's okay. It's okay if things shift a little bit. And that doesn't mean anything bad, but it does mean that, yeah, we're in the terrain of the feminine where things are different from one day to the next. And that's okay.
Definitely. Well, and so how can we set a powerful intention today? By asking all these questions, right? And a powerful intention for sisterhood is really looking back at what we just talked about, knowing you can't take anything personally.
Yeah.
That you got a 20% chance of connecting with each person you meet in the world positively, which is kind of depressing, but it's realistic.
I don't think it's depressing. I kind of feel like it's freeing because it's sort of like, well, yeah, it frees you up to just be who you are. Because I mean, why even bother to try to do anything different? Because someone could dislike you for no other reason than that you, I don't know, have blonde hair or brown hair or whatever.
Right. Right. No, and okay, so setting a power of intention is a big, doing, what did I just say? Sorry.
So
like moving around here everywhere, and I'm just like, I get so distracted every time. Like, and I lost my train.
yeah, there's a lot of pieces that I think we talked about, like knowing the patterns that we tend to fall into when it comes to like what is our default
Right.
in our relationships, what are the patterns that we tend to default to, you know, who are the people in our life, like who would we say are the 5 women that maybe we spend the most time with. I mean, I think it's important to look at that. So when I think about setting a powerful intention, I think about, well, what is the pattern that I would like to have in place, you know, as opposed to maybe the pattern that's been running me, that's been creating relationships that may not serve me as much as I would like them to. And again, this isn't about blaming the other person. It's about owning your own pattern.
Well,
you
and I
know?
think it's really cool if we, I mean, I'd like to set mine and think of it real quick. And I'd like everyone that's watching this now or will watch this in the future, think about what your powerful intention is. Like for me, I think, I mean, the 5 women that come to mind for me right now represent women that uplift me, women that call me out on my shit, women that communicate transparently and hold a heart space of love through that, and women that show up for me in my life.
Yeah.
Really important to me, with things that I've been through recently, you know, knowing that I can count on them and they can be real. And for me, with everything I just said, that's what I want to be for someone as well.
It's so funny as you're saying that, Kelly. I was like, wow, it sounds like you're describing yourself.
Oh,
because that is who you are. Like that is how you are. That's how you show up for other people. So it totally makes sense that is something that, like,
it's nice to have congruency because I haven't in the past. I've projected my own, you know, it's different projecting, but that's what my intention is for the women that I surround myself with.
Totally.
What's yours?
My intention? Oh my gosh.
Brought that out.
I feel really happy in my sisterhood right now, honestly. I don't actually, I'm kind of in this like really awesome place in my life where I feel really, really content with what I have. And it's so funny. I have to share with you like something I told my partner Sean recently. I was like, I'm kind of in this place in my life where I am not looking to make more friends. Like it, and that sounds really bad, but what I mean by that is, like, in the past I used to always be like, oh, I need to have more friends. I need to have like more people in my life that I can connect with. But I really feel like all of the relationships in my life right now I'm happy with. I mean, they're all very different from each other and it's all different levels of closeness, but I'm happy with them. And every new relationship that comes in, I want it to be effortless.
I love that. The effortless.
The effortlessness is so important. So that's my intention. My intention is around effortlessness, not trying to be friends with any person in particular, but allowing relationships to form organically and trusting. I love
the organic friendships, but I do want to, for me, be careful because I've been in your space for many, many years where I've been very content, right? With what I've had. And there's not a yearning, but there's an openness to new people. Like I have a very new friendship with the woman that I travel with now, who we knew each other for years and we never thought we'd connect on the level we do now. And we travel together and we have so many similarities, and it's really been a beautiful friendship to see it organically unfold over this last several years, where we should have been friends in high school when our kids were close, but we weren't. And so we were at a space in our lives now where, like, who knows, like the friends that you're maybe acquaintances now can actually as well.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think that, again, it's the allowing things to unfold in their time. And I think that for me, and it's funny where I'm like, oh, I'm really content. And I have to say, pretty much there isn't a year in my life that goes by when I don't discover a new sister in my life. Like, I feel like it's really awesome. And, but I'm also realizing, like, oh, I don't have to try so hard to make this happen. Like, connection happen.
Because you're amazing.
Well, it's what you were saying. I think there's a piece around the congruency and, you know, being able to define who you are, what it is you want. There's something about that that just almost like you're allowing for that opening to be there. It's like you're drawing in, you're magnetizing the things you need in a certain way when you have that kind of clarity. And I think that's when it becomes effortless, and when it doesn't have to be a matter of like needing to try so hard and needing to be a particular person or to have a particular kind of person who's in your life.
No, it's
Yeah.
so amazing because it shows you are comfortable in your own skin when you're just that way. So that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope this conversation helped everyone today. And I know I love talking about sisterhood. Nirmal and I are writing a book about it right now. She's helping me write this book. We are doing our sisterhood retreat at Omega this fall. And it's stand in solidarity with your sisters and be part. I just tried to read it. Be part of a Women for One's retreat, and it's at Omega Institute in October. And we just got the pamphlet today. If any of you know about Omega Institute, they just sent out their fall list of courses, and we are faculty now at Omega, which is very exciting.
Yay.
And
Super
we're going to do a 5-day retreat on sisterhood and the power of it. If anyone's interested in going to Omega, check it out on our site. It says retreat on our homepage. And also, and you can register here, which Darcy will put in. And then join us in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about some tips and tricks, right, on how to actually navigate the hard conversations in sisterhood and be transparent and truth tell so you can get your relationship even dive into a deeper level. Anything else?
Yeah. No, I think that's it. I mean, I would love to just hear from other people and know what your relationships are like and what your intentions are that you're setting around sisterhood, and maybe what your default patterns are, because we all have them. And yeah, it would be great. So if people wanted to post in the comments and share their experiences, we would really love to hear from you.
And we'd love to hear your stories as well about it. We're actually doing a contest right now, which I didn't want to dive into, but look on our site. We're doing a story competition that people are going to, for International Women's Month, we're calling it, in March, where we will feature you for free on our site. So send your stories about sisterhood, whether it be powerful and uplifting or heartbreaking and that you learn a big lesson from. We'd love to hear from you. Great. Well, thank you, Nirmala, for a great
thanks, Kelly.
A great hour, and we look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care.
Yeah. See you soon. Bye.